Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Tonight's story opens at a car rental yard with a connected car wash, one of those places where chaos is so normal it barely counts as chaos anymore. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. They segregated me at work because my personality made them uncomfortable. I used my system admin access to ensure my weekends were interruption-free. My first job was customer service-based, and it was a nightmare. I worked at a car rental yard that had a car wash next to it. They were owned by the same person, but on paper they were two separate businesses. They worked in tandem, though. The rental cars were cleaned at the car wash, but the car wash was open to the public as well. Some absolutely effed up crap happened there, the worst of which was probably the time someone had a murder victim in a barrel in his car, and he used the car wash to wash away the blood that leaked out. But a lot of other stuff happened there as well, so I had to become quite familiar with the security system, since I had police come for footage often. On the weekends, the car rental yard would close at 2 p.m., but the car wash had to be manned until 5 p.m. That's because some car wash services required hands-on work from a professional. We were all employees of the car rental yard, but I was the only one treated as a car wash employee, so I was the only one who had to stay behind to man the car wash. The reason I was stuck with that job is because management didn't like me, not because of something I had said or done, but because of my personality. They thought I was an autistic robot, which are words they actually said to me. To put into perspective how much they didn't like me, I worked there for 5 years and not once did I get invited to a Christmas party. At first, I figured it was because there was no party to get invited to, but nope, it turns out they had parties every year, but they excluded me on purpose and made sure everyone knew to keep it a secret from me. One year, though, a new hire accidentally let it slip, and when I asked management if it was true, they said yes and that I wasn't invited because I made people uncomfortable. They actually used the phrase autistic robot to describe my personality. So that explained why I was segregated to the car wash section by myself instead of the rental section. Before I started, they rotated who was a car wash employee, so it was more equal, but when I started, I was quickly stuck there by myself. At first, I didn't understand why, but it all made sense in the light of that comment. So I started to resent being there a lot. I decided that if they didn't have respect for me, then I didn't have to respect them. Since they would ditch me at 2 p.m. on the weekends, leaving me alone to work until 5 p.m., I decided I would stop doing work in that time. I would have just packed up and left after they did, but I had to set the alarm, and they knew when the alarm was set, so I had to be around until 5 p.m. My plan was to just sit in the office and watch Netflix or something until 5 p.m., but customers kept showing up and interrupting me. I figured out that if I wanted to do nothing interrupted, I had to make the place look closed. So I started packing up after they left. Then I'd just sit in the dark office watching Netflix and eating Indian food from the restaurant down the street. It became a ritual. I'd get a nice curry and naan and chill for a few hours on company time. This worked for a couple of weeks until a customer decided to ring. Up until that point, customers who showed up looking for a deluxe hand wash would either leave or settle for an auto wash. But this guy who rang really wanted a deluxe wash. He Googled our opening hours, realized we should be open, so he called. The thing is, though, the car wash didn't have a phone. All calls went to the car rental offices next door, and when those ring out, the call gets redirected to the boss's phone. So I was sitting in the dark car wash office eating my curry when I got a call from my boss. He told me about the phone call and that he saw me on the security cameras sitting in the dark. He was not happy. I managed to escape most of the ire due to the time it was. It was about 4:30, so I managed to convince him I only closed 30 minutes early instead of 3 hours early. He still wasn't happy, but it could have been a lot worse. I wasn't deterred, though. I thought I'd worked out all the kinks in my brilliant plan, but two remained. Customers who called would reach the boss, and the boss had remote access to the cameras. Luckily, though, I knew the admin password to the cameras thanks to having to retrieve footage for the cops, so the password was the same for the phone account. So I changed the rerouting number to mine, and I reset the password to the cameras to default. I thought about changing it to something else entirely, but I figured I'd have plausible deniability if it was discovered the password changed. If it was reset to default, it could have been a glitch or an accident. Besides that, though, I had a feeling that they only looked at the cameras if they felt they needed to, so I figured as long as they didn't get a reason to check, then they'd never realize they were logged out of the cameras due to an incorrect password. And with all rerouting calls going to me instead, they would never have a reason to check the cameras. So every weekend when they left, I'd change the number to mine, get my curry, and shut up shop. Afterwards, I'd change the number back so they wouldn't find out. I did that for 6 months without getting caught. Only about 3 or 4 people called during that time, and I just told them the Google hours were wrong. In my opinion, they deserved worse. Any business willing to discriminate against employees for something like being an autistic robot deserves to be sued into bankruptcy 100 times over. F those people. I don't get how come the owner didn't notice he isn't getting car wash sales on weekends, nor any calls. And how come he didn't check how many hours you were sitting in that office in the dark alone in that incident where he caught you? But what I don't get most is why do you want to keep working for such a nightmare of a boss? And our next story. Our shop floor turned into a penguin parade of petty rebellion after a ban on waiting to clock out. I work at a manufacturing company where the layout is, let's call it, functionally inconvenient. The closest time clock to the employee parking lot sits down in the machine shop, which is a gigantic open square of concrete, metal, and noise. Every day, like clockwork, pun intended, about 24 of us would wander down there around 3:25 p.m. and hover in loose clusters near the time clock, waiting for it to strike 3:30 so we could punch out. No one was blocking machinery or causing trouble. We were just tired employees watching the last minutes of the day drip by. Enter our new general manager. She'd been with us a couple months when she apparently decided that this very normal, very harmless ritual was unacceptable. One morning, a freshly printed notice appeared on the bulletin board and above the time clock. No congregating around the clock before shift end. Violators will be disciplined. It was written with all the warmth and friendliness of a parking ticket. Word spread fast, and by that afternoon, the entire shop floor was buzzing with people muttering, "So now what? Are we supposed to materialize at the clock the moment it hits 3:30? And funnily enough, this edict coincided perfectly with a corporate-wide health initiative, a big company cheerleading effort around the Olympics. Everyone was encouraged to download a step tracker app. There were weekly prizes, location versus location challenges, and lots of posters with silhouettes of people doing heroic exercise poses that absolutely no one here has ever done voluntarily. But the important part, steps counted. Everything was steps. Take more steps. Compete against other branches. Win a water bottle. Boost morale. Be healthier. So you can imagine what happened next. The machine shop has a marked aisle running around the entire perimeter of the floor, a big rectangle loop. Once the time clock ban went into effect, employees still drifted down to the shop shortly before 3:30, but instead of standing still, everyone just started walking. Not fast, not purposefully, just laps. Dozens of people shuffling in the same clockwise direction like a herd of extremely tired, steel-toed penguins. And since the circuit passed directly by the time clock, every lap gave you a new chance to check whether it was 3:30 yet. Within a couple of days, the entire last 10 minutes of the shift had turned into a silent procession, 30 people making slow, continuous circles around the machining department, phones in pockets, happily logging steps. We weren't congregating. We weren't violating any posted rule. We were simply being very dedicated participants in the corporate fitness challenge. Management couldn't say a word. They had literally told us to walk more. One afternoon, the GM happened to walk in just as the 3:25 herd was in full motion. Picture her expression as she watched a rotating procession of employees gliding past her in orderly loop, step after step, nobody stopping, nobody talking, just the steady shuffle of steel-toed boots and the faint buzz of machines. To this day, I swear she must have been thinking of that scene from Midnight Express where prisoners spend their days pacing in endless circles. Her face had that same horrified disbelief. The very next morning, a second notice appeared. Employees may resume waiting near the time clock as long as they do not block walkways or equipment. Just like that, the rule vanished. You'd think people would have dropped the walking routine immediately, but nope. Turns out once you get a bunch of bored employees hooked on competitive step counting, and once they develop a taste for petty compliance, they keep going. For the next several weeks, right up until the contest ended, people still went down early to get their daily steps in. The walking loop became a habit, a ritual, a weird little cultural artifact of our workplace. Watching my coworkers continue their slow, deliberate laps just to prove a point and rack up a few extra steps was one of the most quietly satisfying rebellions I've ever witnessed. I'm actually surprised that places still use single time clocks anymore. Passive electronic employee badges are cheap and hard-wearing as hell these days, and readers aren't so expensive that there can't be one on every door. Actual time clocks seem like something you'd only see in a museum. And our next story. I stopped the highway patrol from using my property as their personal way station. I live just outside a tiny rural town, population barely scraping 1,000. On a stretch of highway that seems to exist solely for semis hauling freight across the state, my house sits on a large pull-through driveway that loops back onto the road. It was one of the reasons I bought the place: easy in, easy out, and room to park anything from my car to my trailer. Unfortunately, I quickly learned that I wasn't the only one who appreciated the convenience. The Highway Patrol and DOT inspectors started using my driveway as their personal staging area for pulling over semis. At first, it was once in a while, an engine rumbling quietly as a trooper checked paperwork. Then it became constant. Day or night, I'd hear the roar of brakes, the growl of diesel engines, and then some 18-wheeler idling 20 feet from my house. Half the time, the troopers parked so badly that I couldn't leave my own property until they finished writing a citation. One morning, after yet another 3 a.m. wake-up call, courtesy of a trucker whose reefer unit never shut off, I finally walked outside to talk to the officers. "Hey," I said, waving to get their attention, "I need you all to stop using my driveway. This is private property." The highway patrolman didn't even look up from his clipboard. "We're allowed to do this," he said flatly. "No," I replied, "you're trespassing. This isn't a rest stop. This is my home." He shrugged like I told him the weather might be slightly inconvenient. "We're performing official duties. We can use it." The trucker, still sitting in his cab, mouthed sorry at me, clearly uncomfortable. I tried again. "There's a massive gravel turnout a quarter-mile south. Why not use that?" "It's farther," the trooper said, turning away as if that settled everything. That was the moment I realized talking to them was about as useful as shouting into the wind. They didn't care about the noise, about blocking me in, or about the damage heavy rigs could do to a residential driveway. They saw something convenient and decided it was theirs. Fine. If they wanted official, I'd give them official. I spent that night drafting a letter, polite, detailed, and very professional. I listed the problems: noise, disturbances, blocked access, and the very real concern that my driveway, which was not designed for commercial traffic, would crack under the weight of constant semi-truck use. I included pictures, timestamps, and a section explaining that I consider this unauthorized use of private property. I mailed it certified to the Highway Patrol District Office and to the DOT supervisor. Paper trail established, confrontation avoided. No one could claim they didn't know. A week later, I heard the familiar rumble of a semi slowing down. I looked out the window and saw a trooper guiding the truck once again into my driveway. I walked outside and held up my phone. "Officer," I said, keeping my voice calm, "you should have received a certified letter informing you this is private property and cannot be used for stops." He scowled. "I haven't seen anything." "Your supervisors have," I said, "and this video shows I've asked you to leave again." He stared at me for a long second, clearly debating whether he wanted to start a fight. Then he clicked his pen shut, handed the trucker his documents, and jerked his thumb toward the road. "Go on," he told the driver. Then to me, "This isn't over." "It is on my end," I replied. They left, and for a little while things were quiet. Then 3 days later, 2 unmarked SUVs pulled into my driveway. A man in a uniform shirt got out and introduced himself as Captain Harrison, district supervisor. "I received your letter," he said, "and we need to discuss your concerns." "Great," I replied, "because I'm done having semis tearing up my driveway." We walked the length of the pavement together. I pointed out the stress cracks already forming, the chipped edges where a trailer had cut too close, the fact that my property is not reinforced like a truck plaza. He sighed. "I'll be honest with you, our officers use this spot because it's convenient, but they shouldn't be conducting stops on private property without permission." "That's all I wanted," I said. He nodded. "Effective immediately, your address is off limits for patrol activity. I'll issue the memo today." And because Karma has a sense of humor, I watched him later that afternoon personally reprimand the same trooper who'd shrugged at me the week before, loudly. Not one semi since then, not one patrol car, not one diesel engine rattling my windows at 2 a.m. My driveway is finally quiet. Amazing what a certified letter can accomplish when common courtesy fails. When you spoke to the officers directly, they dismissed you. This is common in situations where individuals believe their official capacity overrides private property rights. Their response, "We're allowed to do this," was likely based on a general sense of authority rather than any actual policy permitting trespass. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.